Okay, I'm super excited to try out these Graphitint pencils from Derwent. I got these, I think, like last week. I go to Michael's quite a lot, and I got some free vouchers, like free money essentially, to just buy more stuff at Michael's, which I honestly don't ever really need an excuse to do that. And so with that, I purchased a couple of unique colored pencils that I had never seen before, and this is one of them. So all that being said, this is not a sponsored video. Derwent doesn't know who I am. Michael's doesn't know who I am, other than the lady who comes through sometimes twice a day. And yeah, these are the Graphitint pencils. We're gonna experiment with these. They're really neat. Okay, so these pencils come in a tin, very much like other colored pencils. You know, of course, I've got my Prismacolors and my favorite pastels in a much bigger tin, but this is pretty standard. I do have a lot of colored pencils. This is actually going to join my other Derwent collection. I've had these Inktense ones for kind of a long time, and I've just started getting used to using them. They're actually pretty awesome. And then these I got at the same time as these. These are metallic colored pencils that like look very neat. So that'll be a different video. But going back to the Graphitint. So these are tinted water-soluble graphite pencils, and I've never seen anything like that before. Do they pass a sniff test? Yeah, they're definitely pencils. They're super shiny on the outside, which of course, like, shininess gets me. I like the shiny. They come, I mean, they're not like not sharpened, but they're not sharp. So we'll have to put those into the pencil sharpener. I'm just now realizing that I have a lot of Derwent products. I have a Derwent pencil sharpener. Not that that matters, it's just the one that looked like the best online. They're printed with the word England on them. And this set comes with 12 different colors. I don't know what those colors will really look like, other than, you know, the little color at the bottom. Okay, let's sharpen one and see how it is. Always start with blue. Dark indigo. We'll start with this one. It's a color I use a lot in my other color pencil art. So we'll start with that. Okay, so since these are water soluble, I'm going to try them out in the watercolor journal. I know I have some blank pages in here. There we go. We'll try it out here, just on the back side of one of these sheets. So I sharpened them a lot. Like to get a nice sharp edge on these guys as colored pencils and graphite pencils. And my sharpener devoured the dark indigo. And then the next time I sharpened, when I did this port, I realized I didn't have to sharpen it as much to get a good tip, so I stopped a little early. Usually with the Derwent sharpener, you can tell it's done when it kind of goes slack, but this one always felt a little slack, so that was a little strange. So just sort of coloring it the way I would with normal colored pencils, just on the side. Just trying to get a feel for the hardness of the tip. I mean, it feels pretty soft. It feels like the Prismacolor color pencil. It doesn't feel like the Faber-Castell, which is a lot like kind of more solid of a tip. Like it's already pretty. I mean, I'm keeping it fairly sharp, but you can tell it's already dulled. Let's see. This is the slate green. One thing I want to see is how do they blend together? Do they blend like watercolor pencils? Do they blend like colored pencils? I'm guessing these are going to be more like watercolor pencils than traditional color pencils. And so it's like a water-based medium, water-soluble pigment suspended with graphite, which is super interesting. I don't know how that's gonna look. I don't know what kind of effect that's gonna have. Here we've got aubergine, which is a fancy way to say eggplant. Eggplants are weird. Ah, okay. Very soft tip. Just broke the tip off of that. Another thing I want to see is how they layer on top of each other, and how fast the color is. You know, I suppose it's not permanent color, so it probably will be reactivated with multiple layers of water. My aubergine needs a little top. I haven't sharpened the screen, but you give them a little top so that we know it's an eggplant. I mean, we all know what an eggplant looks like, of course. Come on now, it's 2021. Alright, and then this last one, this port. Just put that right on top to see how that color comes together. This is Midnight Black. Just the black. Just want to see. You can get a pretty thin line with a sharp point. It stays pretty sharp. Not pressing too hard. I guess I want to see how dark can I get? Get pretty, can get really light, really light. Feel like it's so soft, it's just sort of flaking off. Might be able to see some of that just coming off right there. So I could press harder. I'm gonna break the tip though if I press too hard. And I did sharpen these quite a lot. Just try to gently layer. Just getting lighter and lighter as I go. Oh my gosh, okay. There's lots of other colors here too. So there's that green, there's a chestnut. Since these are watercolor like pencils, I guess I don't feel the need to sharpen them as much as I did. So I'm just gonna go in without sharpening and really like without sharpening, I can still get a pretty good line. I'm not sure what the graphite part is. These just feel like watercolor pencils at this moment. There's nothing about them that seems particularly graphite-like. Cool brown. This one is Coca. A lot of browns. Brown options. There's no yellow in this set. Kind of like ochre to mix with. Just kind of interesting. I think the closest is this green, which is ivy. And there's a few grays. This one is Storm. And we've got Cloud Gray. Really cool. Storm is a lot warmer. It's got some red in it. This Cloud is definitely cooler. It's a bit metallic. I don't know if that comes through on the camera, but as I'm moving my paper around, I can, like, it's reflecting light the way a graphite pencil would reflect light. Okay, and then the last color I haven't tried yet is Cool Gray. Cool. Which is like a blue, much more blue, of course. It says it's like a dark blue. It's indigo adjacent. Let's put that next to the indigo and see how those are different. They're really similar. This one definitely is more gray. The Cool Gray has more gray in it. The indigo is more of a midnight blue. I also wanted to put the ivy next to the slate green. Okay, and then that aubergine and port are the only two colors I don't have a swatch for. I'm using the back side of watercolor paper for this, so that's going to be some of the texture that you're seeing come through. Ooh, so soft. Super soft. Okay, let's get some water. Our water-soluble pigments. And we're going to try them with a little bit of water. Just got my normal round brush here. Okay, just curious. Ooh, very water-soluble. That was really just kind of, they're watercolor pencils. Oh. They're definitely like your standard watercolor pencil. Okay. All right. I'm not really sure what the part about the graphite is about. I'm not, here's the blend of the green and the blue together. I mean, what I'm getting out of this is that these are really nice watercolor pencils. I mean, they're all right so far. Let's see if we can, what happens to some of these lines, if they blur. If you don't have a lot of pigment down, you can basically just like erase it with some water, it looks like. You can really move it around. Like, it doesn't matter that this was really light on this side. I can move pigment from the top down here. I guess I thought that it would be like part pencil, like it would leave like a pencil drawing and then watercolor like automatically around it. But these are straight up watercolor pencils. Am I missing something? I don't think I am. It's just this one tin. I haven't looked up anything about these yet. Wanted to just try them out first before I looked anything up. So I'll do a little bit of research after this. You can really just like pull all that color out, move it around a whole lot. Like, it can completely obliterate the line that was the edge of these squares. I mean, I guess the next thing to do would be to see how these pencils hold up when drawn on top of wet paper, as one does with watercolor pencils. I don't think I'm disappointed so much as just like, this is not unusual, and it wasn't what I was expecting. I guess I was expecting something more unusual, more novel. Color-wise so far, I mean, you have to wait till these dry to really see how the color looks. They're really nice, bright colors, really distinctive. I think that, which one was that? The ivy is a good substitute for not having like some sort of cad in clean water. And let's do storm blue. Or no, storm blue. Storm, where'd it go? Storm, just storm, storm gray. All right, so that section's wet. Yep. You know, I don't typically like doing that with watercolor pencils because it just eats up so much of the pigment. And I am a fairly conservative painter. Interesting layering. I mean, it's not super wet paper. It's damp now. You can definitely get some like layers on top. That's pretty neat. How about something dark under and then something light on top? Paper's definitely drying. You can see it. A little bit more water on there. I mean, the other thing about drawing with watercolor pencils onto wet paper is it starts to eat up the paper really fast. That's another reason I don't really like doing it. My aubergine is pretty dry. Let's see if I can like tighten up some of the edges here. I don't actually do a lot with watercolor pencils. They're just so different from color pencils. I haven't really gotten into them, although sometimes in my classes, the last day of class will be like, here are some different kinds of pencils we can use. This will probably end up in that class. So you can layer on top, it looks like. I mean, the pencil's so soft, I'm not really getting anything sharp out of it. Let's see, can I do some like, there's no white, there's no gouache-like pencil to create highlights or anything on top. So you really gotta rely on leaving white space as you're coloring. It's a bit richer as I lay the second layer of color on top of the dried pencil layer. It comes out pretty rich and smooth, which I like. It does reactivate the layers beneath. Yeah. So it's not permanent the way the Inktense pencils are. So yeah. I think I'm going to draw some trees with these next. See how those go. For this project, I want to try out these pencils by drawing this tree that I see a lot on my walks around town. These two particular trees I think are some kind of maple. They have these really small pointy leaves, and the way that the branches sort of reach up from the main trunk are really cool. It's kind of like, it has a shape of like a torch. Like I always kind of imagine a flame sort of within the branches. And the other neat thing about them is that there's the way that the leaves change color from the top of the tree down toward the branches goes from sort of reddish gold through yellow and then to dark green the closer it gets to the trunk. And I just think that would be a neat thing to try out with these pencils. The first thing that I'm going to do is sketch out the shape of the tree, just sort of get the general idea of what shape this is, especially that sort of torch cup-like form that's made by the leaves and the branches. And I'm just sketching it out with a normal pencil. I was thinking originally that I would make this as a multimedia, maybe with the Graphitint pencils and some of the other color pencils that I have, but I decided as I was working that it would just be the Graphitint pencils, just so I could see their versatility of different ways to use them. But I did end up using a normal graphite pencil just to get the sketch down. I probably could have done this with the Graphitint pencils, but it would have added more pigment as I blended it out in later layers, and so I didn't do that. One thing about trees and wanting to make them look really natural, I think, is making sure to get the space between the branches. And so you saw me draw a little bit of that space between the branches just underneath where the leaves get really thick. The first thing that I do with colored pencils, usually, especially I think with watercolor pencils, is lay down a really thin layer of color. And I'm going to start with the darkest green just to block in the color where the darkest parts of the tree are. So I'm looking at the reference image pretty much this whole time and noticing the shape of the dark leaves and just like kind of taking the whole tree as one picture, as one whole thing, and sketching in where those dark leaves turn to the brighter green. And so for that, I'm using the slate green for the dark green and the ivy for the lighter green. And then because I didn't have a yellow, I'm using, which one was that? Got it here in front of me. I used the chestnut in this set to create some of the yellower tones toward the tips, and I topped it all off with that port, that sort of reddish purple, reddish violet color. And also, by the way, that peach iced tea is super delicious. Every time I see it on the screen here, I'm like, got more of that peach iced tea in the fridge. I might go grab some. With the mint is just perfection. Very summery. Although this week has been weird summer here in Oregon, at least in my part of the state. It was like super stinking hot a couple weeks ago, and literally within this week it's been a huge range from like cold to sort of hot. I think it's gonna get hot over the weekend again. So peach iced tea was great while I was drawing, but now it's actually too cold for some iced tea. Anyway, to blend out the colors here, these colored pencils, I'm using a very small round brush, and I'm making a circular motion with the tip of my brush, just a little bit of water. I don't want to wash out, since this pigment really dissolves in water very easily. I don't want to accidentally wash it out too much, so I'm using just a little bit, a little damp tip on my brush, and I'm making sort of a circular motion as I blend out the colors. And I actually really like this stage of the tree. I just think that those colors kind of came together really nicely, and there's a lot of distinction. After letting it dry completely, because I didn't want to accidentally muddy the pigments and I didn't want to tear my paper, then I started working with the selection of grays and browns to draw in the details of the branches and the trunk. And in my reference image, the trunk is a lot lighter than the branches on top of it. And so I tried to concentrate my darker colors, the black and the darker grays that I have here, and the darker browns toward the top of the tree, and then some of the lighter grays toward the bottom. And then I just went over and blended out some of that color pencil. I think if I were to do this tree again, and I think I will, because it's a really cool looking tree, I'd like to put more details into the trunk, like maybe just get some more line work in there. And I think to do that I'll probably use a different medium. I'll probably either use one of the Faber-Castell pencils or maybe even ink, just to get finer details. These pencils are so soft, and of course they're watercolor pencils. They're just not really, they don't get as thin of a line, as detailed as I'd like to get. And so I certainly would use them with other materials. After everything's dried, I go back in with the same colors that I used to lay down color in the beginning. I live in a noisy area of town. Going back over with some of the same colors I used in the beginning to sketch in the shapes of leaves, and really, I'm not getting too detailed here. Like I said, these pencils don't really, they don't hold their tip well enough to create a lot of detail, and so I'm being real sketchy, just sort of using a scribbly sort of technique to draw in the idea of leaves, you know, just how they sort of lay on top of each other, create shadows against each other. But I'm not at all drawing like every leaf at once. I am making sure to stay in those areas of shadow. So wherever it's already dark, I'm trying to darken it up a little bit more with some of that sketchy detail. Going back and forth between the ivy and the slate green. This was actually a really fun project to work on. I was surprised by the Graphitint pencils, which I did end up figuring out how to actually pronounce the name of this product. Because like I said, I didn't look up anything at all about it before I started working on this video. And then after I finished filming, thought maybe I should look at it a little bit before I do my voiceover. And yep, I was pronouncing the name of the product completely wrong the entire time. So it's Graphitint. There's an I in there. Even though they weren't as different as I expected them to be, they are the best watercolor pencils that I have. I have these, and I have the Derwent Inktense pencils, are the other closest pencil. I should use those two together and see how they come together. But I hadn't liked the previous set from a different product line that I had of watercolor pencils, and so these are pretty fantastic. I really enjoy these, and I would probably take them with me on trips. And at the very end here, I block in really light color, just a little bit of cool gray, very light dark indigo, just to create, like, you know, a little bit of a background, give the tree a little world to live in, so that's not just hanging out in space in oblivion, even though pretty much that's what we all are doing anyway. Super light wash to smooth that out, blend all that together. Yeah, that was my little sketch practice with the Derwent Graphitint pencils and delicious peach iced tea. This was a fun project to work on. I always have a great time trying out new art materials. New to me. I know that these have been around for a little while, but I really enjoyed them. They are pretty good watercolor pencils. One thing that I really liked about them is that their color stayed pretty true. Usually with watercolors, after getting wet down and then drying, they dry a little bit lighter than they were when they were originally applied to the paper, and that wasn't totally the case with these. So I do recommend these. And yeah, thanks for watching. Have a lovely day. I'll see you in the next one.